It's 4th and 6 on our own 4 yard line. Better send for the Punt Team. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Punt Team, the Racing Post weekly NFL show where we break down our best predictions and best bets to help you bet better on all of the action in the gridiron. My name is Andrew Wilsher, joined by Luke Lindholm. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We had another Monday Night Football thriller with Detroit and Baltimore. And man, I'm already looking towards that NFC West rivalry that we're going to get on Thursday night this week.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, just sticking with Monday Night Football, we obviously saw the Lions prevail 38-30 over the Ravens. Lions moved to 2-1, getting their season back on track. Ravens, we talked about it before, that tricky start. They now find themselves at 1-2, despite looking like such a fantastic team. So give me your thoughts on that matchup and your takeaways.
Man, we talked about it last week, but I think Detroit, they've shown they're the real deal. We know Ben Johnson left for Chicago, but Dan Campbell still has a sling of tricks up his sleeve. That offense and Jared Goff deserves a lot of respect. But again, I'm not selling on this Ravens team. I know they're 1-2, and it's really been down to their defense, right? I think they have played awful. They're tied with the Dolphins for most points allowed in the NFL, and they're actually the only team since 2000 who have scored 100 plus points through 3 weeks with a losing record. The other 25 teams in that stretch have gone 68-7. So if this Baltimore defense wakes up, which I really expect them to, I expect them to be in that AFC championship, and I'm not doing too much with this 1-2 record. If you look at their Super Bowl odds, Vegas isn't either. They're still sitting right around 6-1, 13-2. So I still love this Baltimore team.
No, absolutely. I mean, we'll come on to it later because they have another crunch game this week on the road to the Chiefs. We'll touch on that. But talk to me a bit about Detroit. Obviously, things didn't go to plan in week one when they were crushed by the Packers, but now sitting at 2-1, are they back in contention for the Super Bowl?
100%. That defense was absolutely getting after Lamar. It almost seemed like other defenses can take note of this. If you're around Lamar, get at his ankles. Don't try and take him down at the shoulders down. If you snip him low, he's not going to be able to run. They had 7 sacks in that game, and it felt like he was under pressure the whole time. But even the defense, I was more impressed with the play calling from Dan Campbell. Obviously, going for it on that fourth down in the fourth quarter with him on Ron St. Brown, that was a huge conversion. And really, was it Ben Johnson's play calling in Detroit, or was it Dan Campbell the whole time? Going to be tough to tell. But I really love this Detroit team, and I'm worried about them in the NFC North and what they can do with Green Bay. What about yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I certainly didn't want to overreact to that Detroit loss. I thought that they were already quite overpriced based on what they did last year. They obviously did have the coordinator exodus, as you touched on there, but there's just still so much talent, especially on offense with this Detroit team. Seeing Gibbs and Montgomery doing what they do best against Baltimore was an absolute joy to watch, and I wouldn't be fading them anywhere. You know, we saw it the week before as well when they put 50 points on this Bears team, and to be fair, that wasn't the Bears looking bad. That's just what Detroit is capable of. They can put 50 points on anybody. So I really like Detroit, and I think they're a massive contender in the NFC and in the NFC North, where we saw the Packers drop to 2-1 with a shock loss to the Browns after the Browns really turned the tide with a blocked kick. We saw a ton of blocked kicks, but perhaps the biggest one was that defeat of Green Bay in Cleveland. Luke, I know that at the start of the season you were very big on the Packers. You picked them for the Super Bowl, but what are your thoughts on them now after quite a shock loss?
So the Jordan Love inconsistencies were right there on Sunday in Cleveland. This was just a huge letdown spot for Green Bay. Those first 2 games in the season, Detroit, Washington, absolutely dominated. They had a long week to prepare for Cleveland, leading 10-0, enter the fourth quarter, and then boom, it's all gone against a Cleveland team that has no life all season. But I do think that game showed more about how good that Browns defense is. Myles Garrett was causing Love fits. It almost felt like he was chasing him down on every single play. So I do think the Super Bowl hype on Green Bay should be cooled a little bit, but I still love their chances in the NFC. It really showed me that I think the Browns aren't just going to be a team you can walk over no matter who's going up against them this season. But what'd you take away from that game?
Well, yeah, I think you touching on the Browns there, I do think that they deserve their flowers as well. We saw it in week one, the Bengals just got away with a 17-16 victory when Joe Burrow was still in, and a lot of people were disparaging the Bengals, that saying that, you know, that essentially that they had just struggled against the Browns. But Cleveland's proven that they can play ball, especially on that defensive end. Even against Baltimore in week two, we saw that game very close before Baltimore just pulled away in the third and fourth quarter. But at halftime, that game was still on the line, and Cleveland's had a really tough start to the season. They started against the Bengals, then the Ravens, then the Packers, then they got the Lions this week. This is a really tough start to Cleveland, but they are showing their mettle, and certainly not this week, but I do think that there will be value in backing Cleveland, especially on the spread down the line. But moving back to the Packers, I do think that the hype of them has been brought back down to earth a little bit, but they're still not a team that I would want to be taking on. And obviously, they're facing the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, so we'll be previewing that matchup in a bit more detail then. But yeah, I'm not ready to jump off the Packers hype train just yet. Other games that featured block kicks, obviously, we saw the Eagles block a kick from the Rams in an absolutely insane matchup that saw the Eagles somehow cover a 3.5 spread as favourites. I know a lot of people were furious about, who had backed the Rams plus 3.5. Another one that I want to quickly talk about is the Buccaneers. They were actually on the wrong end of a blocked kick that was returned for a touchdown by my wonderful Jets. But unfortunately, the Jets did what they do, and Baker Mayfield seemingly did what he can do. He led yet another final minute game winning drive to take the Buccaneers to 3-0. All three of the Buccaneers' victories this season has been courtesy of a game winning touchdown in the final minute from Baker Mayfield. Now, we're going to touch on the Bucs a little bit later on when they face the Eagles, and we'll be previewing that game. But I just want to talk about Baker Mayfield for a second. And this is clear bias speaking because, as you know, I put up Baker Mayfield to win MVP at 33-1. I am gobsmacked that people aren't talking about Baker as being a serious MVP candidate. We're hearing it about players like Justin Herbert. Patrick Mahomes is still high up on that odds board. Baker has led 3 game-winning drives with a minute left. That is MVP play right there. He did it with his legs against the Jets last week. He's picking out Emeka Egbuka. He's doing everything that you look for in an MVP candidate. The Bucs are 3-0. If Tampa Bay is able to knock off the Eagles this week and move to 4-0, you've got to put Baker in that MVP conversation, right?
100%. It almost seems like the recency bias. We throw in Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes. You mentioned Herbert, who I've been extremely impressed with to start the season. But those 3 other quarterbacks, it just seems like, okay, throw them in. Doesn't matter what they're doing on the field. Their odds are going to be the shortest to win MVP. So I still love the value in Mayfield right now. And he's shown 3 weeks now he has that it factor. Like you were saying, offensive line completely beat up. No Tristan Wirfs in that game. No one to throw it to. Mike Evans played, I know, but his hamstring clearly wasn't 100%. They could get Chris Godwin back this week too. And if this Bucs team gets healthy and picks up a win against the Eagles, I could 100% see them running the table in that NFC South. And Baker's got to be an MVP conversation come the season end.
And now moving on to the first of our many game previews. We've got a nice bit of early football both here and across the pond as the Vikings face the Steelers at Croke Park in Dublin. We've got a 2:30 p.m. kickoff on Sunday, so around 14 hours of NFL action straight from start to finish if you're sticking around for that. But we've got for this matchup, we've got the Vikings as 2.5-point favourites over the Steelers. You can get the Vikings at 4-6, Steelers 13-10, and the over/under is at 41. So this is the first ever NFL game to take place in London. The Vikings did play, in Dublin. The Vikings did play in London last season and will be there again next week against the Browns. So they've got a really good chance to acclimatise. But Luke, let's first talk about Minnesota's statement win against Cincinnati. Does that make the Vikings a contender again, or is this just the Bengals floundering after Joe Burrow's injury?
Man, I did not see that blowout coming. And Carson Wentz, he played a clean football game. How many times can you say that in his career? But the key for that too, for me, was really that Brian Flores defense. He was causing fits for Jake Browning. Obviously, an inexperienced quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, not as much. But Rodgers has only faced his Brian Flores defense once, which was actually last year in London as well, and he threw 3 picks in a loss for the Jets. So I really think this Vikings defense is going to keep them competitive. If Wentz continues to play a clean game, they will 100% be in playoff contention. I know they won the turnover battle by 5 turnovers last week against the Bengals, and that's going to be a big key against this Pittsburgh team that my Patriots, man, 5 turnovers last week against Pittsburgh. If they don't do that, they're walking away with a victory, and I think that over cashes as well.
Unbelievable.
So, going to be a real key to the game for me.
Yeah, no, big time. And touching on Minnesota again, like for me, like I think you hit the nail on the head. Brian Flores in this defense is just capable on their day of shutting anyone down, which leads nicely into my best bet of the game, which is Jaylen Warren under 59.5 rushing yards. I am gobsmacked that this line is this high. I'm absolutely viewing this right now as potentially my bet of the NFL season so far. Warren under 59.5 rushing yards. Warren has failed to eclipse this number in 3 games so far. Over the last 2 weeks, he's had 48 and 47 rushing yards. And it's not like he didn't have that many carries. He had 18 and 14 carries in them games. The Steelers are averaging just 2.8 yards per carry this season, which is the second lowest mark in the entire NFL. Meanwhile, the Vikings just held the Bengals to 53 total rushing yards on 21 carries. I mean, Chase Brown had 10 carries for a pitiful 3 yards. DeAndre Swift in week 1 only had 53 yards on 17 carries. Warren hasn't shown anything for me to think that he is deserving to have a line this high. I absolutely love Brian Flores' run defense. He just knows how to shut teams down. There's no reason that Warren should be able to top this number. Obviously, you're always at risk of a big run to knock your underbet over, but I cannot see any reason why Warren should hit 60 rushing yards in Dublin against this Brian Flores run defense.
Completely agree. You mentioned it. They are averaging 2.8 yards per carry. In Mike Tomlin's team, they've recorded less than 200 rushing yards through 3 games, which is only the 5th time that's happened in his tenure. 3 of the other 4 seasons that happened, they missed the playoffs, going 8-8. The other season, which was in 2021, they finished 9-7-1 with the first-round exit in the wild card. So if they don't get this rushing game going, we could see a poor season for Pittsburgh, and I don't see it happening for them against this Minnesota team. Not only that, but I do not like Pittsburgh at all this week. Their defense, again, we talked about them, 5 turnovers forcing the Patriots last week. They're actually 28th in the NFL in total defense, giving up 386 yards per game. And the only reason they've been winning games because of turnovers. They're tied for second to last in the NFL in net yardage, and it's just not sustainable. One little tidbit, too, when it comes to international games, history isn't on the Steelers' side. Favorites across the pond and in Brazil, in Mexico, so anywhere international. They're 36-13-1 straight up and 32-18 against the spread. Wentz played a clean game last week. We talked about this Brian Flores defense causing fit for Rodgers last year in London. I love the Vikings minus 2.5 at 10-11. That'll be my pick for this game.
And immediately following that Vikings-Steelers game in Dublin, we've got a great NFC matchup between the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 6 p.m. It's a battle of 3-0 teams, but Luke, I think both teams seem to have kinks that they need to work out. There seem to have been some teething problems from both sides, which seems weird to say about 2 teams that are undefeated, but what are your thoughts on them?
And how about that Eagles last first half against the Rams? Just 33 yards in that first half, which is the lowest mark by Philadelphia in the last 10 years. Their offense has really struggled. We saw it in Kansas City the week before. Luckily, they came back in the second half. It seemed like A.J. Brown was finally revitalized in the passing game, and Jalen Hurts does have an arm. So I do think the Eagles' offense can turn it around in this one. But on the flip side, we've talked about Baker Mayfield's comebacks with the Tampa so far. He's actually played extremely well against Philadelphia recently for Tampa. In the last 2 meetings, he has 684 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions against the Eagles. And when you look on the flip side, this is a bad spot for Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team. He is just, as the Eagles quarterback, 7-7 straight up on the road against teams above 500, and he's gone 2-4 straight up in his last 6. So I really think the Eagles could struggle, but I do think they'll have a better offensive performance in the first half. They're averaging 12.7 points per game in the first half, even after last week's awful performance against the Rams. And Tampa's averaging 14.7 first half points. So I really think both offenses will come out flying in this one. So my best bet for this game will be the first half over 21.5 points at 10-11.
Yep, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And part of that leads into my thoughts on my best bet, which is taking the Buccaneers plus 3.5 at 10-11. Personally, I just can't turn down catching this Bucs team at home with a field goal head start. I know that Mike Evans is going to be missing from this one after he got a hamstring injury, but they've got Chris Godwin poised to come back, who should be able to fill that hole, and we've already got Emeka Egbuka lighting it up. The big thing for me, which again feeds into my love for Baker Mayfield this year, he has no interceptions yet. He threw tons of them last year, but there's been mostly mistake-free football from Baker this year. And if he can continue that, then I think the Buccaneers have a great chance. The Eagles obviously had a tremendous comeback last week against the Rams, which has to be respected. But you can't ignore that first half where they were decimated and dominated on all sides of the field, and they're showing a lot of issues on offense that I think needs to be worked out. Right now, this season, they're ranking fifth last in yards per play this season, and the teams that surround them in that metric are the likes of the Saints, the Panthers, the Burrowless Bengals, and the Tennessee Titans. You know, one of these teams is not like the other sort of thing, and I can just really see that catching up to the Eagles, especially when you're factoring that the Bucs have allowed the fifth fewest yards per carry, while the Eagles are allowing the sixth most. So if Tampa can get its run game going as well with Bucky Irving and Rashad White, then I think that they have a tremendous chance of keeping it close there. Ultimately, I can see the Eagles still prevailing in this one, but I love the Bucs to cover here. Rightfully, the Rams should have covered, getting 3.5 points on the road at Lincoln Financial Field. I don't think the Bucs are that far off of the Rams. So getting the same number of points and playing at home this time, I think it's a great spot for the Buccaneers. And coming up next after that, we've got what is potentially an AFC Championship game preview between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs at 9:25. But incredibly, Luke, both of these teams enter this matchup at 1-2. So ultimately, one of these teams will actually drop to 1-3, which seemed almost incomprehensible at the start of the season. But here we are.
Seriously, I mean, if anyone had these teams to go 2-4 in their first three games combined, you must know the future and give me the Super Bowl ticket right now, because I, for one, didn't see the Chiefs starting this slowly, and this Ravens defense, we talked about in the intro, but man, they could not stop anything this past Monday against the Lions. Especially, it just felt like Detroit was playing bully ball, just rushing it right between the tackles. If they don't get this fixed, I love the Ravens, but 1-3 in a competitive AFC North, it's going to be tough to turn this around.
No, big time. And, you know, we also have to factor in that the Ravens are favoured in this game. They're 2.5-point favourites. On the money line, Ravens are 4-6, Chiefs 5-4, and the over-under is 48.5. But I remember a couple of weeks ago when we were leading into Eagles Chiefs, we were talking about how Mahomes has only ever been an underdog at home once in his career. Now he's an underdog again, so twice within a couple of weeks. Is this a sign that the Chiefs dynasty is over?
It does feel like it's going that way. In those two games as a home underdog, he's 0-2. He obviously lost 2 weeks to Philadelphia and then fell to Buffalo back in 2022. So I'm sure you're going to see plenty of stats. I mean, I have him too. He's 11-5 straight up as an underdog his career. He's 12-3-1 against the spread. He's 28-12-1 against the spread when the Chiefs are -3 or less or an underdog. But he's dropped 3 of those games in a row. So I think the Chiefs are in trouble here, and especially with how good Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens have been after a loss. Lamar is 21-4 straight up in his career after a loss. And since the start of the 2023 season, the Ravens have gone 9-1 against the spread in games after a loss, and they've won 6 of those 9 games by 14 or more points. Now, do I think they're going to win by 14 or more against Kansas City? I mean, if you want to take a flyer, I won't be doing it, but I wouldn't dissuade you. When it comes down to it, though, I'm just backing this Baltimore offense until I see this defense respond. The Ravens, I took them in week 1 in Buffalo with their team total, but they're 26-11 to their team total over. And the main thing that I'm going for in this game is actually a player prop, and I love Lamar to throw for 2 or more passing touchdowns in this one. He's done it in 11 straight games and in 15 of the 16 of the Ravens games dating back to last season. So the Chiefs' pass defense, it's held up so far, but who have they played really? Jalen Hurts 2 weeks ago, who we just found out he has an arm again. Russell Wilson last week in New York, who is now on the bench. And when they played a real quarterback in week 1 in Justin Herbert, he torched them for 3 passing touchdowns. So I absolutely love playing Lamar to have over 1.5 passing touchdowns at 5-7. A little chalky there, but I wouldn't dissuade you even from taking Lamar going over 2.5 passing touchdowns in Kansas City this Sunday.
Yeah, no, I can definitely respect that, especially when you factor in that Derrick Henry has obviously had ball security issues lately. I think it's 3 straight fumbles in a fourth quarter in 3 straight games. So there could be some concerns over there that make them want to keep the ball in Lamar's hands. But, similarly along those lines, my best bet is taking the Ravens -2.5 at 5-6. And it all revolves around Lamar Jackson. Lamar has been perfect through 3 weeks, 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And you can argue that the 2 defeats that the Ravens have suffered could fall on Henry's shoulders. Henry had that awful fumble against the Bills in week 1. And then last week, Henry just never really got going. He did score a touchdown, but in terms of his yardage, the last couple of weeks have been very underwhelming for his classic numbers. But I think Lamar will take this game on his shoulders and he'll want to carry the Ravens to victory. This is arguably a watershed moment for Lamar and the Ravens. They've been red hot for over half a decade now and yet still never made it to a Super Bowl. And one of the big reasons is this Kansas City Chiefs team. The Chiefs always seem to have the Ravens number, but now we finally see Kansas City potentially in decline. Baltimore's stock is still sky high despite starting the season 1 and 2. This is where Lamar and the Ravens really need to prove to the world that they are a serious Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs, obviously, they beat the Giants last week, but at the end of the day, that was the Giants. It had all the makings of a big Mahomes bounce back spot, but I don't think it really counts for all that much. Mahomes is still just completing 59% of his passes this season, so he's not quite been what he was in the past. But more than anything, the Ravens have scored at least 30 points in 3 straight games. I can't see Kansas City matching those numbers. So ultimately, I'm happy to take the Ravens to win this by a field goal. And then finally, our Sunday night football game sees the Green Bay Packers taking on the Dallas Cowboys. This is Micah Parsons' return to AT&T Stadium after being traded from Dallas to Green Bay. Luke, how do you think Micah's gonna be motivated for this matchup?
I think he's going to come out absolutely flying, and this matchup almost feels like a flashback to the 90s. We haven't seen the Packers play the Cowboys at night in prime time since 2010, so this has been 15 years in the making, and I really do think the Packers were looking ahead to this spot in Dallas when they fell to Cleveland last week.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And I think that obviously there's now going to be a big motivational factor to want to bounce back from that Cleveland game. So arguably that defeat to the Browns could result in even more bad news for the Cowboys, as if they needed any more bad news after the way their season has started.
Seriously, and the way the season has started, and then also the injury to CeeDee Lamb last week. I know this offense has been playing well, but the defense cannot stop anyone, and I don't think it'll get better this week against Green Bay. I'm really worried about Dak in this Dallas offense performance without Lamb, because they've only played 3 games without the star wide receiver since 2023. When he's on the field, they're averaging 26.3 points per game. When he's not on the field, they're putting up just 13.3. And now they're going against this Packers defense that's first in the NFL in scoring defense at 14.7 points per game. We already saw them hold the Lions, who have bounced back and look like a juggernaut on offense, and the Jaden Daniels Commanders team to under 20 points. So I really do think this is a great spot for Green Bay to bounce back. But I'm really going with the Dallas team total under 19.5 points at even money. So without Lamb, I don't know where they're going to go. I know they have George Pickens, Ferguson has looked great in the tight end spot, and even Javonte Williams, a running back, has pushed it in a few times. But Green Bay has showed again and again on the defense side of the ball, they're going to shut you down. They're going to get after the quarterback. And like we said, Micah Parsons has even more motivation in this game. So give me the Cowboys team total under 19.5 points in Dallas.
Yeah, no, I love that pick, and very much on similar lines. I'm actually going with the Packers -7 at 20-21. I don't usually like taking road teams giving up a touchdown, but this is a spot where everything looks primed for a Packers blowout win. Starting off, you obviously touched on the awful Cowboys defense. They're giving up 9.8 passing yards per attempt, which is by far the worst mark in the NFL. But on top of that, they're also allowing the fourth most rushing touchdowns. This Cowboys defense cannot stop anyone, whether it's through the air or on the ground, and has been an absolute sieve. I mean, in week 2, they made Russell Wilson look like prime Peyton Manning, and now 2 weeks later, Wilson's been benched because his 2 starts either side of that matchup were woeful. That's how bad the Cowboys defense has been. And now they're welcoming a Jordan Love who's going to be desperate for some redemption. And he's a quarterback that seems to flourish when playing indoors. Over his last 5 starts, Love has put up 227.8 passing yards per game, 10 touchdowns, and 1 interception. You know, the game that always stands out to me, it was on Thanksgiving 2023 when I think the Packers were heavy underdogs against the Lions. They went into Ford Field and absolutely blew it up. And this is something that I can see Jordan Love doing once again against this Dallas team. You touched on it already, but the Dallas offense is in chaos right now with CeeDee Lamb being ruled out. But also Dak Prescott hasn't quite lived up to the expectations that we thought he would when he came back at the start of the season. So he obviously had his issues against the Bears last week, and the Cowboys overall threw 3 interceptions. Ultimately, against this Packers defense, I don't really think that they have much of a chance, and I think that they'll comfortably be able to shut down that team. I think the Packers will easily outscore the Cowboys and cover this touchdown spread, and I wouldn't even mind taking an alternate number for them to win by 2 touchdowns, by 2 touchdowns and a field goal. I can't see anything but a dominant Green Bay win on Sunday Night Football.
Absolutely love Josh Jacobs to have a bounce back game in this one. They played the vicious Cleveland run defense last week. They didn't, as a team, they rushed for under 100 yards. And since that's happened with Matt LaFleur as the head coach, Packers are 24-11 straight up the next game and 21-14 against the spread. I'm loving a Packers money line, Josh Jacobs anytime touchdown, or even with the spread there. So yeah, I'm all in on this Green Bay Packers team to bounce back, and really think the Cowboys are going to struggle to score.
And now it's time for our punt team big game treble. Luke, it was deja vu once again, as we seem to go 2 and 3 on these every week. But hopefully this is the week that we finally bring home a winning acca for our viewers. Why don't you kick us off with your pick in the Vikings-Steelers game?
So I'm starting off over in Ireland. And again, I am not buying this Pittsburgh team. They're giving up the 28th most yards per game, while Minnesota is tied for 10th in red zone offense through 3 weeks. So we've really seen the Steelers' opportunities come from turnovers. I'm expecting another clean game from Carson Wentz and Brian Flores to absolutely unleash this Vikings defense on Aaron Rodgers, who struggled against Brian Flores last year when playing in London. So give me Minnesota on the money line to start us off with this treble.
Yep, love that. For the next leg, I'm going with the Buccaneers plus 3.5 against the Eagles. I just think that there is so much offensive upside with this Bucs team, even without Mike Evans. You know, they've got Chris Godwin coming back in. Emeka Egbuka has been unbelievable at wideout, the rookie. And Baker Mayfield with his 3 game-winning drives, he has all the hallmarks of an MVP, in my opinion. And not even just that, you've got Bucky Irving continuing to flourish in the ground game. I think that Tampa being at home as well is a massive advantage for them. They always seem to flourish at Raymond James Stadium. But on the flip side, the Eagles just haven't looked like the Eagles that they were in 2024. They might be 3-0, but each of those victories hasn't been easy. The Cowboys arguably could have beaten them in week 1. The Chiefs fumbled it near the goal line when they beat them in week 2. And then even last week, they needed a massive comeback effort to get past the Rams. I feel like this could be a bridge too far for the Eagles. And then building off of that, we've got Ravens versus Chiefs. I'm going with the Ravens to win straight up in that game. So I think that this is a watershed moment for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Baltimore has had a ton of support and a ton of love over more than half a decade now, and yet there's still no Super Bowl appearance. And a big reason for that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs dynasty seems to be on its way down. This is a great opportunity for the Ravens to bounce back from that defeat to the Lions last week and prove that they can get over the hump and reach a Super Bowl. I think they're going to be highly motivated to go into Arrowhead and pick up the win. But not only that, this Ravens offense has been averaging in the mid-30s every game, while the Chiefs offense has looked very stagnant thus far. Patrick Mahomes is only completing 59% of his passes. He looks vulnerable. I think that the Ravens are going to be able to take advantage. So our big game treble for this week is the Vikings to win, the Buccaneers plus 3.5, and the Ravens to win at around 9-2. So let's get into the Punt Team player prop double. I'm going to be going first, and my best player prop of the Sunday slate is new Giants quarterback Jackson Dart under 33.5 rushing yards. This will be Dart's first start for the Giants after Russell Wilson was benched, and Brian Daboll, the Giants head coach, has already indicated that he'll be taking it easy with Dart. So I think that it's unlikely that he'll have too many designed runs. Cam Scatterbo, the Giants running back, has looked very good so far. He ran the ball very well last week. And since the Giants also have Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary on the backfield, I don't think there'll be too much emphasis on Jackson Dart to run the ball all that much. But then on the flip side, you need to look at the Chargers defense. This defense already speaks for itself and has many plaudits, but they've already held the likes of Bo Nix to just 33 yards on 8 carries last week. And the week before that, they held Geno Smith to just 20 yards on 5 carries. Overall, they're allowing the 9th fewest rushing yards. So even if Dart does break off for a couple of runs, I don't think he'll be getting very far. 33.5 rushing yards is quite an ambitious line, and it feels a bit inflated due to the hype. So I'll happily fade that. Jackson Dart under 33.5 rushing yards. Luke, what way are you going?
I'm joining you with another under pick, and I'm going to the Bears-Raiders game. I'm taking the Bears wide receiver DJ Moore to go under 53.5 receiving yards. So entering the game against Dallas last week, there were already some trade rumors about Moore leaving Chicago, and he just has not been the focal point of the Chicago's passing game with Ben Johnson in charge this season. He's averaging just 4 targets through 3 weeks and 45 yards per game, which has been a huge drop from last year when he saw over 8 targets a game. With Rome Odunze stepping up as the go-to option for Caleb Williams, Moore has clearly slipped down the pecking order in this new offense under Johnson, and I think he's going to struggle again against this Raider team. Las Vegas has only allowed 6 receivers to clear this number all season, but those guys average 7 targets in their matchups. That kind of workload doesn't look likely here for Moore, especially with the Bears expected to attack on the ground against a Raiders defense that's giving up 114 rushing yards per game, which ranks in the bottom half of the NFL. Everything here is pointing towards another slow game for DJ Moore. I'm taking him under 53.5 receiving yards at 10-11.
And now it's time to get into the Punt Team best bets of the week. This is where myself and Luke go head to head with our best bets of the entire Sunday slate. Last week, we both nailed it. So the score is now 1-1. I chalked it off with the Chargers minus 2.5, and Luke had the Cardinals plus 1.5. So fingers crossed we can have a couple more winners for you this week. I'm going to be going first, and my best bet of the entire Sunday slate is the Bears versus Raiders game to go over 48 points. So for starters, it's important to know that both teams are currently 2-1 to the over this season, and there is so much offensive upside, in my opinion, on both teams. Geno Smith has been airing that ball out like it's nobody's business, but more importantly, he's been hitting his receivers. Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, they've all been showing up. They've all been delivering big games, and that should be converting into points in this matchup. Since the Bears, they've been allowing the most passing, they have actually allowed the most passing touchdowns this season, the second highest completion percentage, and the 6th most yards per attempt. Those stats are slightly skewed, admittedly, by that Lions game where they gave up 52 points, but I've seen enough to think that they'll struggle once again against this Raiders team. We saw it in the fourth quarter as well against the Vikings, that this defense can just shed a ton of points at any given moment. But then on the flip side, this Bears offense seems to really be coming alive with Caleb Williams and in particular the wideout Rome Odunze. I think that they are going to be the perfect tandem to take it to this Raiders defense that's allowing the seventh most passing yards per attempt. They were just shredded for 41 points by the Jaden Daniels-less Commanders last week. Overall, we've got two very strong offenses here and subpar defenses, and we've got a very narrow spread, which suggests that the game script could easily be a very close back and forth shootout. I'm taking the over 48 on this one. How about you, Luke? What way are you looking?
So I'm also going to be targeting a total this week, but I'm going out west and I'm targeting the Jaguars 49ers under 46.5. So the 49ers really can't catch a break. I mean, losing now Nick Bosa for the rest of the season to a torn ACL, they're really a different team without him, as they've gone 57-28 when he's on the field versus 6-12 without. But I'm also not sold on this Jacksonville team. They definitely have found their identity again on defense. They forced 9 turnovers through 3 weeks. And now Brock Purdy should be back for the Niners. But if not, even Mac Jones has a questionable tag. So we'll see who's coming up at quarterback for San Francisco. But one thing is they're not going to have much prep this week. Now, San Francisco's passing attack has looked sharp to start the season, but that's come against the Saints, Seahawks, and Cardinals, who have been great defense when it comes to scoring, but their passing defense hasn't been too strong. Meanwhile, the Jaguars' passing defense have held opponents under 185 yards in 2 of the 3 games, with that lone outlier being when Jake Browning came on for the Bengals. You know, the pass defense wasn't really prepping for Browning all week, and they got torched because of it. On the offensive side for Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence has looked great in the first half starting games, but after halftime, his passer rating is just 56.1 with a completion rate of 50%. Now you add in the Jaguars have historically struggled on the West Coast. They're just 2-13 straight up in 3-12 against the spread over the last 20 years. Wow. And this has the look of a lower scoring matchup. The totals back it up too. Jacksonville's games have averaged 40 points per game, while San Francisco's 3 games have averaged 36. 4 of their 6 combined games have stayed under this number. So I'm expecting a low-scoring game. Give me Jacksonville and San Francisco to go under 46.5 points at 10-11.
So there we have it for NFL Week 4. It's bound to be yet another crazy week of American football in the NFL. But for now, that wraps us up here for the Punt Team. Remember to like and subscribe and also comment. Tell us whether you're backing mine and Luke's best bets, whether you like our player prop double, and more importantly, tell us your best bets of the week. But for now, he's Luke, I'm Andrew. If you're ever in a 4th and 9 situation, backed up in your own 34-yard line, remember to send for the Punt Team. Thank you very much.